tax-free and we don't pay no taxes.
They wanted money from us, and we didn't want to cooperate, so they put a green light on us.
Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we tapping into Northeast LA, diving into an early 90s war which broke out after Lowell Street Locos refused to pay taxes to the Mexican Mafia. This choice put them at odds with their former clique, El Sereno Reefer. The Lowell Street Locos, sometimes called the Lowell Street Boys, began as part of the larger El Sereno Reefer gang. El Sereno Reefer has been active in the El Sereno district of Los Angeles since at least the 1960s. Lowell formed around 1990 by local teenagers who hung out on Lowell Avenue. Tony Bandit Alvarado was one of the founding members. El Sereno Reefer, a predominantly Latino gang named after the El Sereno neighborhood. ESR's territory spans several blocks, and it traditionally had cliques like the Lowell Street Locos, Ithaca Street Locos, and for a time, Lowell Street. ESR's purpose was to claim and protect El Sereno from outsiders. By the 1980s, it had hundreds of members, and its cliques dominated the area near Huntington Drive and neighboring streets. Like any Serenos, ESR falls under the hierarchy of the Mexican Mafia. Henry Indio Carlos was the first ESR member to be welcomed into the Mafia in 1982 after being sentenced for murder. As most people know, the Mexican Mafia is the most dangerous prison gang in California. Their power in the 80s exerted enormous influence over Southern California street gangs. From their cells, Mexican Mafia shot callers controlled territory and drug trade through local Sereno gangs. In 1992, the Mexican Mafia sent a representative, a tax collector from ESR, to enforce the new taxation edict in El Sereno. The Lowell Street Locos flatly refused to pay tribute.
They came to us wanting taxes, we said no. We're our own people, that's it.
According to underworld accounts, that same year, a Mexican Mafia tax collector was murdered in El Sereno, and Lowell Street was blamed for the hit. Lowell Street was green-lighted, effectively an order from the Mexican Mafia, that any Sereno gang member could attack or kill Lowell members on sight. Overnight, the Lowell Street Locos, once just an ESR clique, became outcasts and enemies to not only ESR, but to every other Sereno gang in the region. Within weeks of the green light, Lowell members were being slain on the streets of Los Angeles. And the first Lowell casualty came not from a street shooting, but behind bars in the county jail. On February 6, 1993, Jose Flaco Urebe, a 20-year-old Lowell Street member, was brutally murdered inside Los Angeles County Jail. Urebe had been jailed on unrelated charges, but once inside, he was a sitting target. Mexican Mafia leaders in jail ordered Urebe killed, branding him a snitch and a member of a green-lighted gang. At lunchtime, two inmate assassins, Joaquin Diablo Alvarado and Jorge Lopez, rushed into Urebe's cell and attacked him. Urebe was stabbed 37 times with a makeshift shank and beaten to death on the spot. Other inmates created a diversion, making noise and staying away so the hit could go uninterrupted. Urebe's body was left bloodied under a bump. One witness later testified hearing the killer shout accusations about Urebe being a snitch as they stabbed him. According to court records, Alvarado and Lopez, neither of whom was a made Mafia member, carried out the hit to curry favor with the Mafia and perhaps earn membership. They were indicted for murder and conspiracy later that year, with prosecutors even pursuing the death penalty against Joaquin Diablo Alvarado for this Mafia-ordered killing. Flaco Urebe thus became one of the first victims of the Lowell El Sereno War. Throughout 1993 and 1994, shootings occurred regularly. El Sereno Reefer's leadership was fully aligned with the Mexican Mafia. They considered Lowell traitors. Tensions escalated dramatically in April of 1995. Antonio Tonito Rodriguez, aged 29, and two other men sat parked in his car on the street in El Sereno. Tonito was no ordinary gang member. He was a Mexican Mafia carnal, made man, and a shot caller from El Sereno Reefer. He was reportedly trying to push up on all of Sereno, asserting Mafia authority over the neighborhood.
Tonito was the Mafia tax collector in the El Sereno area. Lowell had no respect for him.
I heard he did a lot of bad things, even to kids, killing kids and stuff. But he's always had someone do it for him in his dirty work,
Here in broad daylight in the spring of 1995, bullets ripped through Tonito's windshield and he slumped over dead in the driver's seat on an El Sereno street. One cop describes it as a daring surgical operation. After trailing Tonito in this stolen SUV, detectives and homeboys confirm the shooter was a 19-year-old Lowell gang member.
Oh, well, rest in peace is the one that did that. They got him, though, you know?
Investigators say not long after Tonito was given the last rites, the Mexican Mafia ordered revenge for his death.
The Mexican Mafia ordered retaliation. Rival Sereno gang hit squads, including local gang Metro 13. According to Lowell Loco member Bandit Alvarado, believed it was a Mexican Mafia member named Ernest Chuco Castro was the shooter. Chuco was an informant at the time, wanted to divert the attention off himself. Chuco eventually testified against the Mexican Mafia.
Former gang member is the star witness in a federal trial against several Mafia members.
Now, one of their own, Ernest Chuco Castro, testified in court about those crimes. For more than 1 year, Castro secretly recorded conversations with several of the defendants.
This allegation against Lowell would turn out to be fatal.
A barrage of bullets 3 months later crashed this 81 Cadillac in Lincoln Heights. This time, Tonito's killer was dead. A second Lowell homeboy left paralyzed and a third wounded. Police say the hitman was Javier Marquez, nicknamed Gangster, and that he shouted, "You vatos have a green light, and this is for Tonito," right before he unloaded his 9mm. He is now serving life in prison without parole, ID'd as an MA associate.
Happy would die in the hospital that same day. Grizzly would die a few years later at home. In 1997, an 18-year-old Lowell member named Lawrence Ramirez would be shot and killed by Lowell Street members. Just 2 years later, his brother Paul Ramirez would seek to avenge his brother's death. On the afternoon of March 31st, 1999, Ramirez drove through Lowell Street Hood in a gold Honda Accord. A man named Carlos Pedroza, who was not a gang member, walked with two of his cousins and one who was a Lowell Street member. As Ramirez drove past the men and yelled, "Lowell," and did a U-turn. Pedroza and his cousins immediately started running. The very next day, Pedroza was outside with two female friends who were inside a car, Cita and her cousin Machado. Pedroza noticed this same Honda from yesterday. Then suddenly, Ramirez and another Lowell member drove by in the Honda, letting off multiple shots. Both girls ducked inside the car, and Pedroza was struck in his arm. As Ramirez fled the scene, Pedroza ran into his house, and his sister's mother-in-law called 911. Ramirez was eventually arrested and sentenced for premeditated murder of Carlos Pedroza. In 2010, LAPD officers arrested two men, Frank Urebe and Daniel Valadez, for prowling El Sereno streets with a loaded gun, allegedly looking to ambush rivals. They were identified as Lowell Street gang members, still carrying on the feud. By the mid-2010s, the Lowell Street Locos numbers continued to dwindle, and by the 2020s, we even see less activity of them. Some surviving members like Tony Bandit Alvarado eventually turned their experiences into a message. After serving time in prison, Bandit reemerged not to seek revenge, but to tell the tale. It's rare to see a smaller clique risk going up against a machine like the Mexican Mafia and survive. But some members were able to make it out, and unfortunately, others were not.
Got a green light, that's like open season for anybody, you know?
At least a half dozen of them have already been murdered, leaving a trail of coffins, hearses, and in-loving memory sweatshirts. But Lowell stands its ground.
Whatever we got is ours, you know? If they want something, they just go get their own. That's it.